Welcome back to Can't Take Your Call Right Now with me, Lauren Reeves.
And me, Harry Monkhouse.
And it is Series 2, Episode 3. And we're not alone. We've got a friend. Harry, intro our friend.
Well, it gives me great pleasure to introduce Andy Laws. Andy, you're actually day 3 into your new role, so congratulations. Super exciting.
Woo.
Maybe you want to give the listeners a little introduction about yourself.
Firstly, thank you for having me. I feel like I'm being honoured by being in such great company between various promotions and presidents' clubs and various other bits and pieces. So I'm hoping some of your genius is going to rub off on me in this hour.
Probably not.
By way of a very quick introduction, I've been in the business development space within software for circa 7 years. You can probably tell from my hair starting to fall out. I did about a year and a half as a global strategic BDR at a company called Braze. Was very fortunate to scale my career with that organization. Ended up leaving after 5 years, having gone through an IPO. I was responsible for circa 20 reps across 3 or 4 offices in EMEA. Bounced around a bit in the last couple of years, so I ran my own business for about 12 months, which was good fun. Did circa a year at a company called Talon One, which was a partner technology of Braze, which again was another marketing technology. And as you said, I am now 2.5 days into my tenure at Databricks, where I'm supporting the UKI business unit. So I'd like to say that it's good fun. Well, it is good fun, but I'm in the trenches at the moment. I'm rather overstimulated and oversaturated, as I said.
I don't miss the start of a new job. Jeez.
Oh, it's tough.
Awful,
It's tough.
isn't it? It's just like,
You see, I love it.
really?
I feel like I get into 2 years into a company and I'm like, oh, I kind of need something, like not need something new, but like I like that
Harry's
learning
like,
something
just
new
going back,
energy. Yeah,
not going
just
anywhere.
kind of yeah.
I
So
like
at the
I
2 year
like being
mark,
part of the
notice.
furniture. No, I like being part of the furniture. It's like you just don't know the language, right? All the acronyms and like various other different bits and pieces.
That's my thing that I don't like about it. It's like everyone calls something a little bit different at every company, and it's like, who do you go to for that? Because I'm used to going to that. Like that's the bit that's like so jarring when you first start somewhere new.
CRM looks different, like sales processes are different. I'd say the bit
Yeah,
that I do like is you have a totally unbiased view of like the people that you're going to be working with, and I think that's really
Yeah.
refreshing. Like you don't have those long-standing relationships or perceptions on people, which I think rarely do you get in life, and I think that's quite a nice thing. And obviously, you start to learn which people you like and which people you really don't like. And hopefully, there aren't so many of the latter, but
yeah, nice.
that's a nice bit about starting a new job, I guess.
And you get a clean slate, so no one knows what you're like on a night out.
No one knows what a terrible human being.
But also, I doubt Andy's on the nights out because you've also got a newborn. So
And I don't drink either. So
Yeah.
I'm due my midlife crisis pretty soon. So
So when you're buying a Porsche or a motorbike,
well, you joke. I just bought a Caterham, so maybe I'm in it.
I have no idea what that is. What is that?
It's like a little two-seat sports car with
sports
no
car.
roof, like no radio, nothing. Yeah.
Andy, I'm just letting you know now you've certified as hitting that crisis. Well, no, would you call it midlife now? Probably at the age that we're all supposedly living to. It's probably like a quarter life crisis more so than anything.
I'll take the longevity.
Yeah.
Third life
So,
crisis.
you actually had a really interesting. You speak about this a lot, but you actually had a really interesting pivot from. You did cricket, right? So you were actually pivoted from a different type of industry into sales, and I think it probably relates quite nicely. And again, we're going to be talking a lot about kind of like the career of a BDR and getting in, and kind of that interview part 2 as part of this. But it's actually really interesting. You have been someone that has probably started their BDR career later than most, but you actually pivoted from being an athlete really into tech sales. Just talk to us a little bit about that transition and why tech sales.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I didn't discover the world of like software and business development until I was 27, I think. So, I spent the majority of my childhood and my teenage years chasing the dream of being a professional cricketer. Like, why I didn't choose football or F1 or golf, where I might actually get paid, is beyond me. But clearly, clearly the two food breaks in the middle of a day enticed me towards cricket.
And the sunburn. Don't forget the sunburn that will turn
Yeah.
Yeah,
eventually.
and the sunburn. Ironically, I did actually have a sun cream sponsor as a Virgin Albino, but
Fantastic.
alas, alas, I don't have it anymore for my holidays. But yeah, so I was very fortunate. I got to play professional cricket for about 3 years. I represented a couple of teams, so primarily Middlesex, based in London or in North London. So if you've ever been to Marylebone, you've been to Lord's Cricket Ground, I called that place home for a short period of time, which I obviously count myself to be very lucky. I retired at the ripe old age of about 21 or 22. I think at the time I very much blamed it on external factors, but there were definitely a number of variables that I probably could have taken more control over. I had a couple of injuries. I probably wasn't really good enough either to kind of have any decade-long career. I went back to school after I retired. I did a master's in advertising and marketing. Did 2 years as a marketing graduate in a multinational, and then I met my now wife and mother to my son, who is the director of sales development at a company called AlphaSense, and she suggested that I give BDRing a go, and that's where I kind of found Braze on the internet. Kind of fell in love with the product as someone that was using a competitor and feeling the pain every day. And then, yeah, I haven't really looked back. It's been an amazing journey. And as you said, Harry, there's definitely some crossovers and some benefits from the world of elite sport that I tried to carry into life within business development and life within, I guess, software sales.
Do
Yeah,
you play
I
cricket
think
recreationally?
No, I retired about 3 years ago. That gets to a point
That's
where
it.
yeah,
Tapped out.
the eyes go and the knees go, and then you start having to live an adult life and be responsible. So I don't play anymore. I try and watch a little bit now and then, but yeah, I've given up playing these days.
Fair enough.
yeah. Well, at least you chose. I chose clay pigeon shooting, which is,
Niche.
by the way,
What?
no. Yeah, I used to shoot for GB,
Wait,
and
for
and
how many years?
yeah,
And how
7 years.
did you
Well, I don't
recruit
talk about. Everyone
people?
else would say I talk about that way too much, but Andy, similar to you, what I chose was probably the most expensive thing that you could possibly be doing, with no sponsorship, and the sponsorships that I ended up getting, it was still costing me more money than if I probably hadn't had them, which was never easy. But I think, well, what I will say is you are definitely a powerhouse in your household of business development. The fact that you're both running but huge teams now, like I can imagine doing role plays in the evening with the little one.
I was wondering where you were going to go for a second there
Oh
when you
no,
started
yeah,
talking about
no,
role
no,
play.
no.
Wait, where were we?
Whoa,
Let's
whoa,
pick
whoa,
it
whoa.
up a second.
Different. That's a different podcast. But no,
That
doing
is
cold
making your
calling
call
role
right now.
plays.
Yeah, look, there's definitely some benefits and definitely some drawbacks to having someone in the house that really kind of empathizes and gets what you do every day. And then equally, when you're sat over dinner and you're talking about pipeline and pips, like it's not particularly what you want to be talking about. But no, I count myself very fortunate to be able to call Selena my wife and my partner. And from a powerhouse perspective, like she owns 98% of that powerhouse, and I own the other 2%. So
Yeah.
she's
As she
phenomenal.
should.
Yeah. Well,
Absolutely.
I always say about Charlotte, I said, I wear the trousers. She just picks out the trousers for me to wear. So,
Fantastic.
which I think is always a great analogy. It's
I
just
like that one.
different.
I'm going to share
It's
that with
just
Cass.
different.
I like that. Yeah, it's fine. I'm well aware that I'm the powerhouse in the household for me and Cass, and he knows it too. So no room for
I know my,
argument. It's great.
I know my.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Good. So, so when you found Braze as your first company, was that, what were you looking for, or how did you think about approaching getting that interview? Because again, I think something that me and Lauren have spoken about, right? There definitely are moments where you just apply and you get through, right? I think it's a bit rarer nowadays because of how saturated the market is. Me and Lauren were discussing in it at the start of this series, where it was like almost like social media has made like tech sales way bigger than it actually is. Now I speak to people and they're like, oh yeah, I know what a BDR is, and I'm like, we didn't have a fucking clue. We turned up to an assessment day, prayed, crossed our fingers, and we're like, "Oh yeah, someone thinks we can talk. Great, okay, perfect. We got a job. But let's see how this goes." And then we actually started to enjoy it
Yeah.
and love it. But how did you get that first interview or that first role? Or was Braze not even the first choice? It was just happened to be one of the ones that you eventually got into.
So I think my train. This is a long time ago. I think my train of thought was very much around like, what do I think I know, and having come out of chasing a little red ball around a grass field for as long as I had done, and gone through that kind of business conversion into marketing, I immediately just and done 2 years as a marketer. I immediately started to sniff around and see like what marketing technologies exist, because I felt like I probably had a more advantageous position if I was coming from that discipline than if I was going into fintech or procure tech or prop tech or
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And it was also an area I was passionate about as well, right? So if I felt like there was a product that I really felt like I could believe in, I felt like that was probably going to put me in a better place to succeed. So I started just to create a short list of potential marketing technologies, and Braze is one of those. I then went and did a bit more due diligence, right? I started to look at, just simple things like what customer stories did they have? What logos did they have? Could I see, the level of growth the business was experiencing, either through just general research or through LinkedIn as well. I did some like coarse grain analysis of the executive team as well to try and understand, what were their backgrounds? What did I sense like their potential capacity ceiling was? Did I feel like, we couldn't predict COVID, obviously, but did I feel confident that these people were going to make good decisions in a highly pressurized environment? So I probably took like a number of those factors in. I looked at funding rounds as well, I think, and who the VCs were as part of those funding rounds. Again, like I didn't necessarily have knowledge around high performing or credible VCs, but I kind of started to stitch things together as I kind of started to do more and more research.
Mm.
And that's when I went through the application process with Braze, and I obviously had the fortune to kind of lean on my athletic career, and I very much used that as a tentpole narrative for like why I felt like I was going to be a good fit for the organization, even if I had no experience. And then I just started to chip away at people in the business, like whether I felt like I was going to be having a conversation with them or not.
I think what I would just want to quickly touch on, I think a couple of things. I think what you just mentioned there about going and doing some research on the C-suite, I don't think, Lauren, we've discussed too much of that. I know we were talking about like bosses and stuff like that, and maybe who you work for, but picking out those individuals or making good decisions or some of the trends of the company is always a good thing. We were discussing like you kind of pick the company because it's a top three player in the space, or you pick a disruptor of that space where they've got some new innovation technology and it's only going to be a matter of time till they chase that, or you go after the manager, or you go after the training, and you kind of pick one of those three
Yeah.
areas. But I think what is also I find really interesting is because you came into this role later in life. Normally, I think traditionally a BDR has been like very similar to what me and Lauren talk about. We started this role, what, 21, 22, and then it's almost, I mean, for me, my second ever job, I think, Lauren, you said you were straight out of uni. So you almost quickly go into this as like almost like a fresh grad. But actually, what I think I'm starting to see, and I think hopefully the listeners can take a bit of benefit from this, doesn't actually matter your age. Like I've got people in my team that are older than me. And actually, what I'm starting to find is people that are transitioning who have done a little bit of a job before and then have had a bit of like a bit more, maybe more maturity within their life are actually becoming people that ramp quicker. So I've actually got a correlation within my team at the moment. Slightly older people tend to ramp a little bit quicker than some of the younger people, or they've had a slightly different life experience as part of that. So I think it's super interesting, and I think it's a highlights that age is still just a number. But if you can
Yeah,
paint that
that's a
picture,
really great point. Like my top rep is 32 and joined the business like 31. And he'd been out and about doing different things, traveling, whatever. Came back, was like, okay, I'm 30 now, to get a job. And he's just locked in differently than some of my younger reps are, because obviously a bit older, more settled, does just want to do really good at work. So yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. Like if you're older and you're like considering a career change, I think that the BDR role is still a very good role for you, because yeah, it just opens you up to so much, and you're probably going to be really good at it because you're just more locked in.
Yeah, I think there's an element of self-awareness in there as well. Like you have a better understanding of who you are, and what you're certainly through your first 12 months in that role. It's going to be a lot of learning, right? And if you've got a good understanding of what your best approach to knowledge adoption is, I think that makes a big difference. And depending on obviously the field that you're in, and certainly for me, having done a year in business school and then done 2 years within two different business units within the marketing function, I had like reasonable commercial acumen. Like I kind of understood the ways in which businesses worked. And I think that definitely obviously becomes beneficial when it comes to, transferring over into a biz dev role, because you're going to need that, right? So I think those things probably stand out as certain benefits for me as well.
Yeah. On that sort of point of what you look for in your like ideal candidates, what else stand out for you when you're either looking at a CV, a LinkedIn profile, someone that the HR's handed over? What's your top things to look for?
So I have a number of things, and I'm not very smart, so I try and keep it as simple and memorable as possible. But it's a number of C's. So I have coachability, curiosity, communication, creativity, and confidence. Some of those are easier to objectively analyze from a CV or from a LinkedIn, and some of those you just have to dig into during the interview process. So they're really the things I'm looking for. I'm less worried about the nuts and bolts skills. I'm looking for the kind of some of those transferable traits and some of those intangibles a lot of the time. I've hired a lot. Obviously, I'm biased, but I've hired a lot of athletes in the past. I've hired people from the like high performing military roles before, West End performers. Folks of that ilk, where they have no necessary background from a kind of tech standpoint or sometimes even a business standpoint, but they just carry the right traits where you have this trust that they're going to immerse themselves and kind of put themselves back in a world where they know how to be the top 1%. And that's really kind of what you're looking for at this early stage of a career or career transition.
I agree with all those. I love coachability, love curiosity, love creativity. I would say, to be fair, I think your 5 C's cover the main things that I'm always after in my reps.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. I always say it's curiosity, coachability, and then it's like resilience and teamwork. I kind of put a little bit in the same bucket because I care less about those. I think the curiosity thing is the biggest thing. If you're asking good questions, you're always like, why, like literally like a little child just being like, why? I think that's half the battle. That's something. It's so difficult to teach curiosity.
Yeah,
Coachability can be quite easy to actually test for within an interview, but
for sure. And what I dread to think how many BDRs or SDRs I've hired now during my career, but I think, and I touch wood, I've done a reasonable job at it, but the very few cases where things haven't worked out, it's largely been down to those two factors of coachability and curiosity. And one of the stats that I pulled out ahead of this conversation was like 80% of new hire failures are through a lack of coachability. So if you're screening or you're going through that interview process, it's really important that you're checking for understanding and seeing whether people are able to adopt information. Are they proactive in trying to get that information out of you? Because that's going to give you a good read.
yeah. So we discussed in the part one of this, we were discussing like our first interview. So I think Lauren and I have a very similar style in the sense that Lauren said we're looking for, she called it a vibe. You can very easily tell, I think, if you're going to get on with someone and be able to basically relay the information that you need to and it be received in the correct way. So we were discussing like normally as an interview process, there's probably stage one is with a hiring manager, or talent acquisition or recruiter is kind of the vetted process. Then it's your hiring manager. Then it might be someone either within the team or for me, I always get another hiring manager or a team lead to do a second interview. And then it's some form of task at the end. Is that different to how you currently interview your reps?
I obviously can't speak for the business I've just joined.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, come on.
Why not? Well, how do you not know things in 2.5 days? Come on, mate.
What do you mean I've not covered that yet?
It's ridiculous.
How have you not hired 100 reps yet? Come on.
Yeah, it's on the roadmap, I'm sure. No, historically, I've probably done things slightly different, not massively different, but slightly different. So yeah, invariably there's some form of screening process depending on the maturation of the business. That's determined whether it's going to be the hiring manager or someone from like a TA role, talent acquisition role. My preference would always be to have someone with, you know, that talent background to take that first call. One, because it's their job and that's their specialism, and they've got a really good ability to kind of work through the applications. I also know there's obviously the introduction of AI into some of that, and that's an interesting topic in its own right for how candidates can think about ensuring that they stand out when it's AI that's actually analyzing their applications. But TA, let's make the assumption that TA do that first screening call. I'm actually a big fan of putting the task early, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first one is I think it acts as a really good protector or phase gate of your time and capacity. Like if someone's genuinely interested in the role, they're going to take the time to go and do that task. If they're just, you know, prospectively like throwing their name in the hat and they drag you out over 2-3 interviews before you actually end up giving them the task, you've just wasted a ton of your own time, right? So like putting that phase gate up early, I want to know whether people are actually committed to this interview process or not, which is why I kind of put it earlier on. I would then be involved generally as a first line manager in whatever that task is. And I don't know whether you want to go into detail on that. It may differ depending on org to
No,
org
no,
to org.
yeah. There's
I would
we
love.
definitely, yeah,
My question was going to be,
we definitely
yeah.
need to go through this because I think this is what this episode is all about. Is that for us, for me and Lauren, it was talking about like our second, third stage. But if you're bringing that forward, yeah, let's dig into that again. I'll let you finish what you were just talking about the rest of it, but.
Sure. So, I mean, once that task happens, there's going to be an appraisal or, you know, some questions around the task. And then depending on whether the candidate's been successful or not, whether it's a, you know, another manager interview or, you know, some mid-senior level person from inside the business would do an interview. And then I would always do a final interview. And that's either, you know, you as the hiring manager as just kind of like a cultural round off, or I'd have a senior executive sign off, right? So whether it's an applicable sales director or whoever your VP of biz dev is, or like marketing or whatever it might be, that would generally be the structure I would take. So between 4 and 5 interview steps. There are some things I would obviously try and be cognizant of with that. You've got to be really mindful of like the timelines associated to your interview process, particularly in a much more competitive landscape now. It's really important that you try and keep that average interview process under 30 days. And then from a signed offer, it's about 42 days. So I think if you're stretching that out, and you know, obviously you're dependent on other stakeholders in your business who are also very busy to try and come and support you. You've got to be really mindful of like who you're getting involved and what those timelines look like. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on tier A talent because they're going to get snapped up somewhere else where the efficiencies are obviously far greater. So that's the process that I've historically followed. As I said, I don't know whether it looks different in this business. I'll get there. Do you want me to chat through tasks that I've set up, or you got questions on that?
Yeah, just quickly before we jump into that, because we were discussing this before around like how many people are you taking through to, again, let's assume that the TA process is not almost included in this. So you've got maybe a conversation with you and then maybe the task and then maybe another hiring manager and then maybe another hiring manager or you as a cultural fit or something like that. So they're the 4 stages. How many people are you taking through? Let's say you've got one role available. And let's just, for the sake of it, let's not say it's a senior role. It's just a normal role hiring someone. How many people are you taking through to first stage? How many people do you want to speak to at the start, roughly?
It's a very good question. And having worked across, let's call it 2 businesses now, like one more established business and one
Yeah.
startup, I think the number differs. Like when
Okay.
you've got a stronger brand, like employee brand or employment brand, it's much easier for you to be add some more rigor to your interview process and actually probably interview less people because you've got a healthier pipeline. What I experienced in a smaller business is actually perhaps you need to interview more people because either the demand isn't there, or you're having to cast the net a bit wider on caliber and have to calibrate as to where do you think you're at in terms of your ability to hire the right talent that you think you need, which I appreciate is not a kind of like black and white polarizing answer. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't know. It's difficult for me to put a number or put a ratio on it, to be brutally honest with you.
I agree.
But I think
I
that,
feel like when I was at Pouty, we got loads of internal people requesting for an interview because like it was known, it was a big company, like it was known in fintech. So like you put out a job ad and you would get 100 applicants. But now, at Swap, like we're getting there. We're entering that stage of like more awareness, but it is harder to get a good variation of candidates. And I think good quality,
Mm.
like you're always going to get loads of applicants on LinkedIn, but it's going to be people that like I just click and apply. Like, so, but actual good quality, I think, is much harder. And I would say that I definitely interview more people that I'm not sure on from their application when I was at Swap than I was at Tapalti. Tapalti, it would be like, no, that's a no. Whereas here, I'm like, let's give them a try. See what they're like.
It's also part of the reason why maybe I'm just inherently lazy, but it's also part of the reason why I try and delay my involvement in the interview process, and I allow other, like, ideally, a talent team to try to
Hmm.
take that initial lift, but then give the task, right? Because you're going to cut people out the funnel before you have to start going and burning calories.
Yeah.
As opposed to taking a whole load of like screening calls, or even if the TA team have gone and screened a whole load of people and I have a reasonable list, I guarantee that there'll be a 30-ish% fallout rate once I give people a task.
Yeah, it's really interesting though, because I'm taking this of again, if I was a listener, right, there's basically almost like three different answers here, right? Which is like, if you're an established brand, there might be a little bit more rigor to the process, and you might need to be a bit more of a top candidate, but you might not need to. There might not be as many people taken through. So let's say like you might take like 8 candidates through to first stage. Whereas with a smaller, less established company, not as big of a name, you're probably going to be in a bigger pool, but you're probably going to be shrinking your chances down because now you're up against 10, 12, 14 people. But at least you've got in the door. Whereas, Annie, you're talking about your involvement being late. Lauren, I know you have a good process with the recruiter teams that you use as part of that. Whereas I have said a completely different answer to all of those, which is I screen every single CV myself. I do 250 CVs every time we basically open a role. And that's because I, I just know what I'm looking for, and I'm very deliberate about, have you connected with me? Have you followed me? Have you sent me a message? Have you done something on my LinkedIn profile in order to just even get into the yes or maybe section prior to even applying?
I
Oh,
think
sorry, not even a prior, but
there's a couple of really powerful insights in there that are just worth like stopping on. So the first thing is like you're 11 times more likely to get hired as a candidate if you come in inbound, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have friends or family in the organization. That's you going out of your way to try and have one or two, three conversations with people in a business,
Yeah.
and to learn about the business as much as anything else. But like the final question you should be asking as part of that conversation is, would you feel comfortable in referring me having had this conversation? Right?
yeah,
Shipping your CV over and getting them to put you in the system, because whether it's you, Harry, that's doing the screening, or whether it's a talent team, the likelihood of you getting through to a screening invitation, or further down into the interview process, is much greater if you're going to have gone through that inbound process than it is if you're just clicking apply or going through the general application. um, and Harry, to your point as well, like from a creativity standpoint, and I've heard you guys have conversations and have other people on where they kind of like prove that you can do the job before you've got the job. You are 2.5 times more likely to get the job if you have sent a creative or personalized LinkedIn DM, ideally a video, to the hiring manager. I feel like
yeah.
that's a pretty low bar, like that is kind of from an
Oh,
expectation perspective.
Agreed.
yeah,
But like
yeah.
you going out of your way to do that, or referencing something about the organization, gives you a 55% greater chance of you getting an interview, right? So like these are
Hmm.
fairly simple 1%. I'm throwing a lot of percentages around, but like there's some fairly simple 1%ers you can be doing to obviously try and give yourself every opportunity to either get a conversation or progress down funnel.
Yeah, and I think as part of that, just because it didn't work once doesn't mean that you shouldn't always do it as
For
well. Because
sure.
I had a VP of business development ping me about a LinkedIn post and wanted to ask a question, and her message was, "Fuck, I missed your video prospecting me for like 2 months, and I just missed all of your messages." And I'm so annoyed because now I wish I had replied and we'd had actually had a chat. So sometimes you do go and do everything under the sun, call them, email them, LinkedIn video, and sometimes you just don't get the interview. But certain moments, Laura and I have spoken about this previously, like when someone goes all out, we just go, oh, like, come on. Like, even if it's not great, just the effort of doing it sometimes is enough to get you in the door
Yeah.
early on.
What I was gonna just kind of round this off with is, and I can hear the voice of like applicants in my head was like, how am I supposed to send video DMs to all of these hiring managers? Like the average candidate, particularly coming out of college, is applying for between 30 and 50 roles, right? That is a lot of work. Like it's a full-time job in itself, right? So I think going back to the very top of this conversation, where I really tried to create that shortlist of targeted business that I wanted to approach and actually work for, I would do that, right? So maybe you've got like some tier A, tier B, or tier C organizations.
Yeah.
Maybe it's those companies where you're desperate to get in because you just see so much upside for one reason or another that we've discussed. They're the ones to go the extra mile with, and then you can obviously consider what your approach or strategy is for those tier Bs or tier C businesses. And again, that's kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis as a BDR too, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you can start to take some of this and learn from it, firstly for like how you go and land a job, but also like whether it's me, Lauren, Harry, whoever it is, like we're going to be working with you around how it is that you prioritize your time and the businesses you're selling to. So like the muscle that you're building as part of the application process is going to be applicable when you get in the door.
100%.
Yeah, completely agree. So on that point with tasks, what's your go-to task to set BDRs?
I would suggest it's generally been pretty similar, but it's definitely evolved over like the last 12 to 18 months with the acceleration of AI. And let me explain. So, um, really what I'm looking so that to kind of outline the task, it's some form of like research component. So we give some parameters around, go and find a business that fits these parameters. So it's an S&P 500 business. Um, and choose a company, then go and choose a particular prospect that you think is applicable to sell to, then write a cold outbound email that you think would resonate with that chosen prospect, and then we do a mock cold call just to make it a bit easier on the candidate as a follow-up to the email, right?
Okay.
And that would be the general process. Now, what's been interesting for me as someone that's hired candidates over the last 12 to 18 months or so is when I first started out doing this, it was very easy to decipher who was like doing a good job through that execution process, because a lot of it was manual, right? It's like, are you good at manually researching a business? Do you have some commercial acumen? Have you spent some time on our company website looking at similar customers, case studies, so on and so forth? Have you gone to LinkedIn, understood the org chart and the personas, et cetera, et cetera? Can you write an email? With the introduction of AI, a lot of that can obviously be done to some degree of automation.
Yeah.
Right. And when I first started seeing people leveraging AI, and using LLMs to go through this process, it actually annoyed me because I felt like they were cheating. When in reality, when I started to interview more people, you could start to discern who had an ability to use LLMs or who had the ability to use the AI to a higher level than those that maybe just started out using it, right? And so again, that becomes a factor as part of the interview process. And ask questions around like, how is it that you're using LLMs as part of this process? Not just like, what's your commercial acumen? Do you understand personas? Can you write a good email? Like there's that AI component now where I'm really kind of stress testing for someone's aptitude in tooling.
Yeah, I think it's actually very similar to the task that I run as the final stage. I do. I don't do a mock cold call because I'm also wary that I'm interviewing people that know how to do a cold call, and then my standards are extremely different to versus someone who doesn't. And I find I get a little bit biased to certain elements. But the what you're talking about, the AI stuff. So I get them to build basically a document of like, okay, so the account, all the people that you would need to go and prospect, why. The critical element, I think, with all of this is the why behind it. So why did you select that account? Show me your maths, and then show me your maths to the people. And then I get them to build a cold calling script with what they think would be common objections based on that, or what would be a case study or a quick like mini pitch or a story that you might tell as part of that, along with the email that you would write from a cold perspective, and also the LinkedIn outreach that you would go and do. And then on quite a few of the recent interviews, I'm like, hey, look, I'm going to be honest. Like, we all know that you're using AI for this, or you're using some form of platform. Can you just like, can we just pull up can you share your screen and just pull up like the chat that you were using? And then very quickly, that's me just seeing how complex they go. Because if they just typed in like, here are all the things that I need to do, churn out one doc, copy
Yeah.
paste into a doc, and that was it. That it was just a one prompt thing. Then that's an immediate no for me. Whereas if they've gone, oh, actually, I don't like that answer, or that's not my tone, or that's how I'm not thinking about it, I'm like, perfect. At least there's a back and forth.
And invariably, you'll see a delta between those who have higher proficiency and lower proficiency, and whether they're using multiple tools or singular tools, and the quality of prompts. And again, like the why that kind of underpins it all is the common denominator, right? So, yeah, I think that's exactly how I approach it.
This is really interesting. So we currently don't have a task just because the speed of which I was hiring, it just slowed things down. So it was just like 3 stages, conversations, da 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 da. However, I want to include a task, and I
Why?
actually
Do you feel like because if we play devil's advocate, if you feel like you're in a position where you're able to run a highly efficient process and your attrition rate is low, is that because you're maturing a business and you feel like you need to do it, or actually is your current process fit for purpose with the business that you operate in?
So good question. The reason is because I now want to hire experience. So I want to actually see whether they can eat, what's the saying? Like, show me what they say type thing. Whereas
Eat the frog.
I think when you're brand new, I expect you to not be very good at a task because, like, you never done the job before. You're green. Like, obviously, there's elements I think tasks are still great, but every hire I've done previously for my team have been brand new. They've all been pretty much out of university. Whereas my hires moving forward, it's me and I currently have 14 BDRs. We're not increasing management right now. I don't have time for a green rep. So I want
Yeah.
to hire experience. And I think adding the task element is going to help me, which is why when you said you do the task early, I immediately was like, I'm going to do that. Because if I can eliminate people really quickly, that's fantastic. But when I did a task in my last role, it was video. I didn't do email because I wanted to see whether people would take the time to record a video. And it was a Vidyard. I would give them the Loom access. I would say use Loom, use Vidyard. You can record it on your phone and you can send it to me. It doesn't have to be fancy. But I wanted to record a 30-second video based on the prompt, which is like, go find a company, da 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 da. And it didn't have to be amazing. I just had to see, okay, like how have they included the research? Like what sort of like script have they wrote themselves? Like what are they thinking about when they're thinking, oh, I've got to send this to a prospect? Like what's their approach? And that was a brilliant task. I really like saw a lot in candidates by doing that. So I think I'm going to do video because we're big video people at Swap anyway, in case you didn't clock. So I feel like adding a video task actually just like within the culture anyway. But yeah, I think it's a great point, but I think that it's just me and we use recruiters, so they're screening my candidates, so they should be giving me good candidates, or I'm a bit miffed off anyway. So good candidate is me, it's the sales manager, and then it's a culture check at the end. And if I can have less people coming to me that aren't very good, then that obviously going to save a lot of my time. So that's also why I want to chuck a task in. But it's a great point. I don't think it's necessary. I've hired fantastic candidates without the task.
Your churn rate's really low, or your attrition rate, and I think that highlights. I think to Andy's point, then I think you're clearly doing something right. So you got to think about why changing it as part of that. I think I feel like I'm going through a new process every week because I'm trying to figure out what is going to be the new formal process. Kind of being my first full year in full-time management. So, Andy, we're coming towards the end. I just wanted to get a sense here around if there's any kind of words of wisdom that you have about if you are wanting to break into tech sales or transitioning from another kind of industry into that, what would be your top tips that you need to be doing to either land the interview or excel in the interview process?
I don't think it's necessarily good news to kick things off. Like the world definitely feels like it's more competitive than it was previously. Like like the average number of applications per role is like 260 or something, Matt. I know it definitely wasn't that way when, we were going through the process when dinosaurs roamed the earth. But I just called you both old, and you're not offended.
We're not quite there yet. We're getting there though.
So, but I think with that, having some form of like process is super important, right? Otherwise, it's very easy to get demoralized or burnt out in kind of going through that interview process. So, I would encourage you to, create a list of businesses that you think look appealing for one reason or another that I alluded to earlier in this conversation, and think about what that prioritization exercise is. I would think about how is it that you can leverage the warmth of an inbound application or a referral, right? As I said, you have to do some outbounding to go and find some people in the business at different levels to see if people are willing to refer you in, and people are, because there's always a financial kicker for the people that are in the business. So that's also a little like secret. It's not a case of like it's not even that secret, but you don't necessarily need to have family or friends. As I said, you just need to find some people that are willing to sponsor you, and they're going to get a financial kickback if you end up in the org, right? And it's going to increase
100%.
your chances of getting into the job. And yeah, just think about creativity. As I said, it's a competitive landscape. What can you do to stand out? How is it that you're reaching out to hiring managers, Apollo.io or other, I don't know whether we can reference brands, but like there's plenty of data. I'm not sponsoring them or I'm not sponsored by them.
If sponsor us though.
Yeah. But there's plenty of like freemium data aggregators where you can get Google Chrome extensions or platform access for free, get mobile numbers, try cold call, send cold emails, double up on LinkedIn, that kind of stuff that's going to cut through the noise. Like, as I said, like generally speaking, the bar for like getting a screening interview probably is pretty low. I think you just have to go above and beyond to obviously try and access that first conversation. And then it just comes down to prep. Like, how much can you digest and make sense of through the interview process? Can you find some people that are 3, 6, 9 months into their tenure in the business and in the role that can give you the skinny on what the interview process looks like and what the hiring manager particularly resonates with, and then lean into that, right? Like they're all things. They're all things that I did for this job.
Yeah.
So
there you go.
Like if it works for me, I'm sure it'll work for others.
100%. Well, Andy, I think that's a great place to wrap up. So thank you very much for joining us. No doubt that we'll be getting you back for a part 2 at some point as well. So thank you again. I really appreciate it, considering you're 2.5 days in.
Thank you for having me.
To the new role, just to mix it in with baby, new role, everything else. So no, we really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Okay, if you like this episode, you know what to do. You've got to follow it. You've got to rate us 5 stars. You've got to subscribe to us on YouTube. You've got to comment, because that's how we get found, apparently. That's what all the other podcasts do. So that's what we're asking you to do. And last but not least,
if you'd like to sponsor the podcast, please just reach out. We're happy to take bribes and do whatever it means to get some money.
As we said before, we have no morals, so just, reach out.
We're absolutely fine with anything. Anyway, Andy, thanks for joining us again. Really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye. Bye-bye.